I've been thinking a lot about President Obama. And I've been thinking that he resembles a Republican more than a Democrat. He's also resembling a bystander more and more when it comes to domestic policy, but as somebody who feels that he has to have his finger in the pot of every single international dispute. It's been quiet lately in the last few days about Libya, but notably today, the news is reporting that Gaddafi appears to be folding his cards in an effort to save face. He has actually asked NATO to stop bombing him. So I guess he's feeling the effects. In the meantime, we've decided, the United States has decided, that we're not happy with the Saleh, the leader of Yemen. On the other hand, the news disclosed all over the papers yesterday, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, that Al-Qaeda has decided to make a new home in Yemen now that they see the opening, now that the United States has basically declared that Saleh is on his way out. The vacuum is being filled by more Al-Qaeda. So to the extent that they were already welcomed in that country, much as they are in parts of Pakistan, now they can openly flex their muscles, and they can be they are shipping arms there. They're getting very excited and organized there. So because of our not liking of a particular dictator, now we have allowed our enemy to come in with open arms over in Yemen. And this is what the danger is. This is what the danger is of responding to quote-unquote democratic protests when we don't really know who the protesters are. As we watch the Arab world shift, my complaint about President Obama, and I understand nobody can be in all places at once, even a president, but my feeling is that his eye is on the Arab world. In other words, that's where I feel when he gets up in the morning, he's looking towards. That's why I believe he won the Nobel Peace Prize. That's why I believe he went to Cairo. That's what I really believe is on his agenda. And to the extent that the Arab world is transformed after the 4 years of his presidency, he will have been very successful in that. But when it comes to paying attention to the domestic agenda, I think that he is failing. And I think that despite the fact that our unemployment numbers are improving a crack, and I'm very appreciative of that, it seems to me that when you look at his policies as a whole, with the exception of Supreme Court nominees, and that's a big exception for a lot of people, but with the exception of Supreme Court nominees, let's talk about his policies. He's keeping Guantanamo open. Despite the fact that Eric Holder would have liked Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to have been tried elsewhere, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, in effect, is being tried in Guantanamo in a military tribunal. But the fact is that having Guantanamo open was one of the things that President Obama campaigned against. He campaigned against it. He said he was going to close it. Whether he wanted him to or not, he has not been able to achieve that, and he no longer even tries. When it came to his handling of the BP oil disaster, I think that he was inadequate, to say the least, and BP is up and running with new drilling right now, and I haven't seen any real evidence that our EPA has changed in any fundamental way to prevent another drilling rig disaster. I hope I'm wrong, but when it comes to environment, when it comes to Guantanamo, I think he's been very Republican. When it comes to thinking about the transformation of our tax system, which is something I think both Democrats and Republicans can agree is necessary, he's taken the lead of the status quo. When it comes to health care, his Obamacare is a disaster, and he has a deaf ear with respect to the mountains of people and polls that are against it. I'm going to tell you as a citizen that since Obamacare has been passed, my own premiums, and my husband has a small company, they went up 35%. My copay went up 33%, from $20 to $30. My doctor has gone to concierge medicine anyway, my wonderful Dr. Steinberg, which means as of June 1st, I'll no longer be able to afford my internist, because I am in that sweet spot of age in which I'm not sick enough to really warrant, to justify having to spend extra money for an internist, and I'm not 65 yet, where the majority of my costs are picked up by Medicare. So I'm in trouble, and I'm going to have to be seeking the services of another doctor. And I certainly cannot afford the $2,000 per family member, another $8,000 on top of the $25,000 that we're spending to get health insurance every year. I mean, it's preposterous. It's terrible. And so the Obamacare solution has not only cost me money, it hasn't stopped the evisceration of healthcare benefits, and it's actually propelled more and more doctors to get out of the medicine they were practicing and to join a concierge kind of medicine for the rich and for only the rich, or to just basically decline to accept assignment for most insurance plans. Basically, I don't see how he's helped the middle class. I really don't see that. And as far as changing corporate taxation, he hasn't. I don't really see where President Obama has responded to the needs of the middle class in this country. I really don't think so. I'm disappointed to say that, and I'm not sure what the alternative is. But that's the way I feel about it. And as far as this threatened government shutdown goes, I think it's a distraction. I really do. I think the Republicans' threat to completely and radically change Medicare is another mistake. Look, they took a program that was simple and easy to administer. It was a single-payer program, which all the elderly loved, and they already mucked it up with Medicare Part D and all these complicated prescription drug plans and having to get secondary insurance in order to cover them. And you know what? When you're old and sick, you don't need a complicated health insurance plan. You need something simple. You don't need it to be more complicated. You're already old and sick. You're certainly old, and when you're older, you need things to be simpler rather than more complicated. But let me go into some more news that you need to know about. There's a bunch of other things yet. So, as you know, this budget deal is looming. They're warning of layoffs. They're warning that, oh my God, the IRS won't be able to process your tax return. Not a problem for me. I'm getting an automatic extension anyway. They're worried about not being able to feed the animals in the zoos. Give me a break. Are you kidding? You don't think there's enough fat in the budget to feed the tigers and lions, all four of them that we have in our national zoos? You know, that kind of hysteria on the Democrats' part really gets me annoyed and upset because it misses the big picture. And, you know, the whole thing of it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. It's like children. You know, I was thinking about this. If I was a corporation, let's say I'm Jeff Immelt, the head of GE, because he's the only name that comes to mind. Do you really think I'm planning a budget where I'm going to run out of funds to pay rent or pens or payroll by 2 weeks from now because our board of directors hasn't decided what our revenues and expenses are? I mean, the entire way our government functions is so dysfunctional that it would even come to this. A regular old business can't afford to act this way. Even regular old businesses that are running out of money do something called voluntary bankruptcy, which is an orderly way to settle their debts. They don't say, uh-oh, we're closing the keys and we're running out of town and we're not paying anyone. I mean, the whole idea of the way our government runs, the idea that President Obama has been in office for over 2 years and he hasn't been able to reach across the table, knowing in November that it was going to come to this, and take the lead as our president, and take the lead as the executive director of all of the budgets, and say, look, let's be honest. We've got to trade some tanks, and we've got to cut down some entitlements. We've got to maybe raise the age of Social Security because people live a lot longer than 47 when the original Social Security went into effect. And I think the American people have accepted this in our brains already. We know that you can't get benefits at 62 and 65 when the average person is living well into their 80s. They may have to wait till they're 68 or 70. Much as we don't like it, the younger generation already understands that. I don't think that's a big surprise to anybody. When you live to 47 or you live to 52, then when you had a retirement plan that began at 62, well, that was okay because the majority of the people theoretically weren't going to get it anyway. But when the majority of the people are living well into their 80s, and we are, thank God, and maybe in the next generation will live well into their 90s, then you can't expect to be able to receive the benefit at the same time as when the mortality rate was age 47. I mean, we're not morons here. Why not at least be straight with us? That we get. And why not cut down some of the military spending? Let's do a poll. How many people still want us to be in Afghanistan to the tune of millions and billions of dollars a month? Why isn't President Obama responding to that? Why aren't the Republicans responding to that? Why are we spending $500 million a week on Libya right now? It's a big mess. And all this talk about shutting down the government and these one-upsmanships and these gamesmanships makes them all look like children. It makes them look like little children who just can't get it together in a kindergarten full of voices with no teacher.